They never saw it coming, did they? The moment you stopped bending, stopped overextending, stopped handing out your energy like it was free. For so long, they mistook your kindness for servitude, your loyalty for obligation. They assumed you would always be there, always answering, always showing up, always prioritizing them over yourself. But something inside you cracked, and from that break, a new force emerged. Not bitter, not vengeful, but awakened. You didn't lash out, didn't argue, didn't need to explain a thing. You simply became the mirror they never wanted to face. The first time you said no, the first time you didn't reach out first, the first time you let their silence stretch instead of filling it with your effort. Those moments weren't small. They were seismic. They felt it like a shift in gravity, the unsettling realization that you were no longer orbiting around them. Each unanswered message, each unfazed response, each time you chose yourself, it sent a ripple through their illusion of control. And for the first time, they had to sit with the weight of their own neglect. You became the storm they never prepared for. Not by destruction, but by absence. You took back what was always yours, your energy, your presence, your power. And now, as they scramble, as they question, as they feel the void where your devotion used to be, they are learning a lesson they never expected. This is your ascension, the beginning of a new era where you no longer play the supporting role in their story. This is the rise of the one who chooses themselves first. And trust me, there's no turning back now. There comes a pivotal shift, one that is neither loud nor sudden, yet its impact ripples through every interaction. No longer do you absorb the energy thrown your way. Instead, it ricochets, unaltered, back to its source. It isn't calculated or forced. It simply unfolds, like an ancient instinct reawakening. You've spent too long as a vessel, carrying the weight of projections, doubts, and unspoken attempts to diminish your presence. But something within you has recalibrated. You're no longer a container. You are a surface, smooth and unyielding. Surfaces do not hold. They reveal. They force those who look upon them to confront what they have long avoided. And when that truth stares back at them, unfiltered and undeniable, it unsettles them in ways they never prepared for. At first, it happens subtly, almost without your awareness. You echo their rhythm, their approach, their presence, but there's an unwavering steadiness in you now. Something that dismantles their expectation of control. Where they anticipated resistance, they find equilibrium. Where they sought to instill hesitation, they meet unwavering certainty. You are not opposing them. You are allowing them to witness themselves without distortion. And that is what unnerves them the most. The recognition of their own chaos, reflected with perfect clarity. The discomfort they feel is not about you. It is about what they now see without illusion. A fragile foundation trembles under the weight of unfiltered reality. Their influence was built on the assumption that they could mold, twist, and diminish you at will. But that assumption no longer holds. Their own turbulence is now their own to bear, no longer diffused through you. And as the cracks form in their carefully constructed facade, it becomes evident this is not just a shift in power. This is a rewriting of dynamics they once controlled. What follows will not be predictable, nor will it be easy for them to navigate. They maneuver with evasion, expecting confusion. They weave intricate threads of manipulation, expecting entanglement. Yet every attempt is met with an impenetrable neutrality, neither indulgent nor dismissive, simply existing beyond their reach. They misinterpret distance as weakness, yet find themselves disoriented by their own tactics being rendered ineffective. The influence they once wielded no longer has a point of entry. Where once they dictated the tempo, they now flail against a rhythm they do not control. Their familiar strategies become futile echoes in an empty corridor, bouncing back without effect. As they grasp for dominance, it becomes clear that the dynamics have shifted irreversibly. Something within you has locked into place, something immovable, undeniable. Absorption is no longer your role. Projection is no longer their advantage. This is not reaction. This is sovereignty. What was once used to undermine you now collapses under its own weight. You are no longer the recipient of their energy. You have become the threshold they cannot pass. And as they stand before that threshold, faced with their own reflection, they are left with a reality they can no longer manipulate. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. There comes a time when the battle ends, not with a final blow, not with a great clash, but with silence. The kind of silence that shifts the air, that unsettles the restless, that reveals the truth they've spent a lifetime running from. They thought they were in control, thought they held the reins, thought they dictated the terms. But when the dust settles and they reach for that power they once had, their hands come up empty. See, real power doesn't fight, it stands. And what they never understood is that their strength was never their own. It was borrowed. It lived in the reactions they pulled from you, in the emotions they stirred, in the cycles they kept spinning. But now the cycle is broken. Now they are reaching for something that no longer exists. There comes a point where their grip weakens, not because they let go, but because there's nothing left to hold on to. Every move they make, every carefully calculated word, every subtle attempt to manipulate, it all falls flat. Where they once dictated the rhythm, they now stumble, offbeat, lost in a game whose rules have been rewritten. The fire they used to spark so effortlessly now refuses to ignite. The reactions they counted on are no longer given freely, and that silence, that stillness, that void where your energy used to be, it terrifies them, because now the weight of their own presence is all that remains. For so long, they fed on conflict, on confusion, on keeping you just uncertain enough, just entangled enough, just within reach. But you have stepped back, and the game cannot be played alone. They throw the bait, they prod at old wounds, they test to see if the spell still works, but there is nothing left to latch onto. They are met with an unshakable force, one that does not react, does not absorb, only observes, and that is what undoes them. Their confidence was never self-sustaining. It thrived on response, and without it, it begins to decay. The carefully constructed facade, the illusion of control, the narrative they convinced themselves was reality. It all starts to crumble. They thought they could hold on forever, that their grip was strong enough, that they had power over the outcome. But power built on illusion is never real power at all. And now, as they reach for what has already slipped through their fingers, they realize the most devastating truth of all. They are not losing control because it was taken from them. They are losing control because they never had it to begin with. What once seemed sharp and calculated is now transparent, flimsy in the light of awareness. It isn't just words that are spoken. It's the energy behind them that is felt. It isn't just actions that are observed. It's the invisible threads pulling them that become clear. The mask they wore so seamlessly before now feels misaligned, slipping at the edges. And with each attempt to manipulate, to twist reality in their favor, they only unravel further. Their tactics are seen before they are even set in motion. The patterns they relied on so heavily now betray them, exposing the predictability they once mistook for strength. And predictability? It's the death of control. When their next move is already known, it ceases to be a weapon. It becomes an echo, empty and powerless. They are grasping at shadows, trying to maneuver in a game where they are no longer the architect. But the foundation they once stood on is gone, and the only thing left for them to face is themselves. For whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6:7. There comes a time when the harvest is due, when the seeds that were sown in deception, manipulation, and control finally bear their fruit. And now, that moment has arrived. They thought they could plant discord, yet somehow reap loyalty. Thought they could scatter dishonesty and still gather trust. But the soil does not lie, and the season of reckoning is here. The unraveling has begun. It started as a whisper, an unseen force pressing at the edges of their carefully constructed reality. The weight of their own actions, once so easily deflected onto others, now sits squarely upon them. And no matter how they shift, no matter how they scheme, there is no escape from it. The control they wielded so effortlessly is slipping through their fingers like grains of sand, and the tighter they grasp, the faster it falls. They can feel it, that shift in the air, that pull in the spirit. The same tactics they once relied on now betray them. The carefully orchestrated chaos no longer lands where it once did. The silent expectations that once forced others to bend, break, and carry the burden for them, they hold no weight now. The power dynamic has been upended, and with every failed attempt to reclaim what is lost, desperation creeps in. There is an unease settling in their bones, a knowing they cannot shake. They are not the master of this game anymore. See, the thing about false power is that it only works as long as people believe in it. But now, the illusion is shattering. The same whispers they once dismissed, the warnings they once ignored, have now become a roar in their mind. The reckoning is upon them, and for the first time, they must stand in the very storm they created, the storm they thought would always pass over them while soaking everyone else. The fear. It's not just about losing control over you. No, it's bigger than that. They are losing control over themselves. The carefully curated identity, the effortless sway they once had over those around them, the unwavering confidence they exuded. It's all cracking under the weight of truth. And as they stare into the abyss of their own creation, they come to a realization that chills them to their very core. They have no one left to blame. You didn't need to destroy them. They did it to themselves. Their own actions have turned against them. The very tools they used to manipulate and deceive now serving as the instruments of their downfall. And you didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't need revenge, didn't need to prove your point. All you had to do was step away. And now, in the absence of the energy they once fed on, they are left to sit in what they have created. No distractions, no scapegoats, no easy exits, just them and the weight of their choices. The silence they once dismissed as weakness has now become the loudest sound in their world, and they cannot escape it, because this is divine order in motion. The same way the sun rises after the longest night, the same way the tide returns to claim what was once lost, the same way the seasons shift in perfect timing. This was always meant to happen. There was never another way this could end. They thought they could outrun the consequences, thought they could twist reality in their favor forever. But the truth was never theirs to manipulate. And now, as they sit in the ruins of the kingdom they built on deception, they are faced with the one thing they never prepared for, themselves. And you walk away, unbothered, unshaken, untouched, because this battle was never yours to fight. This is just the beginning. What was once concealed is now exposed under an unfiltered light, revealing layers they never wanted to acknowledge. Every maneuver they attempt rebounds, every falsehood crumbles under its own weight. The art of deception no longer bends reality in their favor, and it's destabilizing them in ways they never imagined possible. They are accustomed to dictating the script, ensuring they remain in control of the narrative. But now, with every feigned innocence, every misdirection, every hollow attempt at persuasion, they are met with an undeniable reflection of themselves. The foundation of their control was never built to withstand such clarity, and it shows. The emotional armor they've relied upon is beginning to crack, their certainty unraveling thread by thread until all that remains is raw exposure. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. The more they attempt to reclaim their footing, the further they spiral into unfamiliar territory. The responses they once expected no longer arrive. The buttons they once pressed now yield nothing. The illusion they upheld so carefully is slipping beyond their reach. They have spent so long controlling the external that they never prepared for the moment they would have to face themselves. And now, with nowhere left to project, no one left to carry the weight for them, they are left alone with the truth. It stares back at them, relentless and inescapable, stripping away the layers of delusion they worked so hard to maintain. This is not about their downfall. This is about rising beyond it. The energy that once belonged to them no longer serves as their fuel. It is reclaimed, repurposed, and redirected. And while they stand amidst the ruins of their own making, the path forward has never been clearer. There is no need to fight, no need to engage, only the quiet certainty of knowing that what has fallen apart was never meant to last. And this is only the beginning. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. There comes a moment when darkness meets its match, not through force, not through conflict, but through the simple, undeniable presence of light. When the storm rages, the sky does not fight back. It simply holds steady, letting the wind exhaust itself. And that is what's happening now. The force that once moved so freely, unchecked, unseen, has suddenly met an immovable truth. It can no longer touch you. Their own reflection has become their downfall. Every attempt to pull you back in, every manipulative word, every calculated push, it all falls flat. They strike at the air, reaching for something that isn't there anymore. The energy they once drained from you, gone. The hold they once had, shattered. And for the first time, they are left staring into the abyss of their own creation. See, control was never real power. True power does not come from deception, from coercion, from bending others to your will. True power stands firm, unshaken, requiring no validation. And that is what terrifies them the most, because you are no longer bending, no longer explaining, no longer filling in the gaps they left empty, no longer handing over your energy like it was theirs to take. And without that energy, they are exposed. They thought they could shape reality around their illusions, but illusions cannot survive when the veil is lifted. The foundation they built, the careful manipulation, the stories they spun, it all unravels, without a source to feed on. They can no longer distort the narrative, no longer twist the truth, no longer pull the strings they once held so tightly. They've never encountered this version of you before, the one who does not flinch, does not explain, does not entertain the same tired cycles. They assumed they had a grip on you, but that grip only existed because you allowed it. And now they have nothing. Because this was never about winning or losing. This was about awakening. You didn't have to fight, didn't have to battle, didn't have to prove a thing. All you had to do was stand in your truth. And that truth? It is a force greater than any deception they could weave. You see, they built their power on sand. And when the storm came, when you stepped back, when you stopped engaging, when you reclaimed what was always yours, that power crumbled. They will grasp at the air, reaching for something they can no longer touch. They will try every trick, every tactic, every desperate attempt to pull you back into the cycle they controlled. But it won't work, because light does not battle darkness. It simply shines. And now, as they stand in the wreckage of their own making, they are left with a truth they can no longer avoid. They never had control. They only had your participation. And that participation, it's over. For so long, they thrived on the imbalance, drawing from a well they assumed would never run dry. But the source was never theirs to claim. They mistook access for entitlement, mistook your patience for permission. And now, without warning, the current has shifted. The supply is gone, the cycle has ended, and the weight they placed upon you has been returned to its rightful owner. The realization dawns slowly, then all at once. They never held power over you. It was borrowed, conditional, dependent. And now that the illusion has shattered, they are left stranded in the void of their own making. This is where they begin to unravel. Without a script to follow, without an audience to play to, they are confronted with the one thing they have always evaded: themselves. The same manipulations that once worked so effortlessly now fall flat. The same attempts to trigger a reaction are met with silence. The world they curated so carefully is slipping beyond their reach, piece by piece, and there is no way to stop it. Every move they make only reinforces what they refuse to accept. They were never in control. They were simply playing a role in a story that no longer exists. And as they stumble, you stand firm. The weight you once carried is no longer yours to hold. The responsibility of their self-perception no longer falls upon your shoulders. This is not about vengeance, nor is it about proving a point. This is about sovereignty, about stepping fully into the strength they never wanted you to recognize. The energy they once fed on is now protected, fortified, untouchable. And as they scramble to find another way back in, they are met with an undeniable truth. There is no return. The door they once walked through has closed, and this time it is locked. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. Isaiah 59:19. There is a moment when the storm quiets, but not because it has passed, because it has lost its power. What once swept through, consuming everything in its path, now meets an unshakable force. Not resistance, not struggle, but silence. And that silence, it terrifies them. Because silence means they can no longer twist the story, no longer pull you back in with false promises, with well-rehearsed words, with carefully curated performances designed to lure you into the same cycle. The same cycle that always follows the same script. First, it's the grand gestures, the love bombing, the sweet words, the sudden acts of kindness, the declarations of change. They paint the picture they want you to see, hoping that if they speak it into existence, it will overwrite the truth. But the thing about truth, it doesn't work that way. And when the illusion fails, the shift comes swiftly. The guilt begins. After everything I've done for you, the weight of expectation is thrown at your feet like a demand. You owe me this. They remind you of all they gave, of all the moments they showed up, forgetting that their generosity was never given freely, only ever extended as a leash meant to pull you back when needed. But this time, you don't move. And when that fails, the final act begins. The unraveling, the desperation, the victimhood. They become the ones who have been wronged. The sorrow is exaggerated, the regret performative, the suffering tailored to invoke sympathy. But you are beyond reach now, because you've seen this all before. The tangled web that once ensnared you now falls apart before it can take shape. The power they thought they had was never real. It was borrowed. Borrowed from your energy, from your willingness to engage, to explain, to fix. The facade fractures, revealing not the force they projected, but the emptiness beneath it. They are confronted with the weight of what they once displaced onto you, and for the first time, they are the ones carrying it. The echoes of manipulation no longer find purchase. The familiar triggers no longer pull a response, and the certainty they once had in your reaction has disappeared entirely. Every attempt to reclaim their influence only sends them deeper into their own undoing. The energy they thrived on is no longer theirs to claim, and without it, they are left standing in the wreckage of their own creation. What was once a carefully constructed illusion is now a prison of their own making. The shift has already happened. The battle they think they are fighting is one that no longer exists. The wounds they thought would never close have healed. The ties they assumed were unbreakable have been severed. And while they remain entangled in their own self-made chaos, you are beyond their reach, not because you fought to escape, but because you outgrew the very space they once occupied. They are still searching, still clawing for something to fill the void, but that is no longer your concern. The past no longer holds you, the weight no longer burdens you, and the echoes of what was fade into insignificance. And now, there is nothing left for them to hold on to. The absence of your energy is a reality they never prepared for, and in that void, they must face the truth. You were never theirs to control. The moment they lost their grip was not when you walked away, but when you realized they were never holding anything at all. And now, as they scramble to reclaim what was never truly in their hands, you remain where they can never follow, free. The moment distance was created, the illusion shattered, not through force, not through confrontation, but through the absence of the energy that once sustained it. The shift wasn't just about boundaries, it was something far greater, something inevitable, a disruption they never anticipated, yet one they cannot undo. The control they thought they had was never real. It was borrowed, dependent on your willingness to participate. And once that participation ceased, the entire foundation collapsed. No struggle, no argument, no battle, just silence. And within that silence, the weight of everything they refused to face comes crashing down. What unraveled them was not an external force, but their own reflection staring back without distortion. The reality they once kept at bay now surrounds them, pressing in from all sides, demanding recognition. The illusions they built, the narratives they clung to, the carefully crafted identity they projected, it all withers in the absence of the energy that once held it together. They are not undone by you, they are undone by the truth they can no longer outrun. And you? You were never meant to be a pawn in their world. You were the catalyst, the force that set the reckoning in motion without lifting a single finger. The power dynamic has been rewritten, and now it is fully yours. Not because it was taken, but because it was always meant to return to its rightful place. They feel the void where your presence used to be, the emptiness where their influence once existed. But that is not your burden to carry, not your concern to resolve. The weight that once held you down has lifted, the cycle has broken, and the energy that was once scattered has been reclaimed. And now, with clarity sharper than ever, the truth is undeniable. This was never about them. It was always about you, about rising, about evolving, about stepping into a space where manipulation, deception, and control no longer have a place. They may still reach, still grasp, still attempt to reclaim what has long since slipped through their fingers. But none of it matters anymore. Because once freedom has been tasted, once true power has been reclaimed, there is no going back.